You know, everybody loves a good shack tour. Big radios, big screens, amplifiers stacked up, towers in the backyard. But let me ask you one thing. What if everything you think you need to get into ham radio is wrong? What if the biggest thing holding this hobby back isn't money? It's the image we've created. Because somewhere along the way, a lot of people started believing something that just isn't true, that you need all of that to be taken seriously in ham radio. Let me say this straight. That's a lie, and it's hurting this hobby more than most people want to admit. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the brand new HamShackTV studio. It is not complete. I'm still planning on putting a green screen behind me and doing some other things here, but we are here at the new HamShackTV studio. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a subscriber here to HamShackTV. Maybe you're not a subscriber yet. Hit that subscribe button down below. It certainly helps the channel grow. And give this video a thumbs up and get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. So let's get into this. I can't tell you how many messages I've seen from people saying, I'd love to get into ham radio, but I can't afford it. And every time I read that, I think, who told you that? Who convinced you that this hobby requires thousands of dollars just to get started? Because the truth is, you don't need a $10,000 shack. You don't need a tower. You don't need an amplifier. You don't even need the latest radio on the market. What you do need is a signal and the willingness to get on the air. That's really about it. And the license, I might add. And here's where this gets uncomfortable. Some of the best operators I've heard are running 100 watts into a piece of wire in a tree. As a matter of fact, I am one of those. I don't have a tower, I don't have a beam, and I don't have a fancy setup. Just skill and patience and time on the air. And they're working, and people like me, we're able to work the world. Meanwhile, there are guys with racks of gear and top of the line radios with beam antennas, and they barely key up the mic. So what are we doing here? Are we building stations or are we building status? Because somewhere along the way, this hobby picked up a bad habit. We started equating expensive gear with skill. And those are not the same thing by any stretch of the imagination. You can spend 10 grand on a shack and still not know how to operate. You can run barefoot with a wire antenna and absolutely dominate a pile-up. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Now, don't get me wrong. If you've got a big station, that's awesome. You worked for it. You've earned it. You should enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with having a nice piece of gear. But let's stop pretending that it's required. Because when new people come into this hobby and all they see is a $3,000 radio or a $2,000 amplifier, they assume they don't belong. And we've talked about this in previous videos. If people think that they can't afford it, they just simply think they can't afford it. And that couldn't be further from the truth. If you go to Hamfest, you'll see out in the boneyard, you'll see some good deals on HF radios. You'll see some deals on amplifiers. You can get a wire, you can make your own wire antenna for a little bit of nothing. But if you're like me and you're not a builder, you're a utility user, you can buy a wire antenna for a couple $100, and it's a pretty decent one. I personally run the G5RV Wyndham, which does a fantastic job. Do I want a tower? Sure, I want a tower. But here's the thing, folks. We're letting money be a gatekeeper in this hobby, and that's a problem. That is a huge problem. We need to encourage, and here's the other thing too. We don't need to encourage somebody that's new into the hobby to go and break the bank, take out a second mortgage or whatever they've got to do to get this big stuff. For one, it's a dangerous investment. And why do I say that? If you think that you need to go out and buy a $10,000 rig and all this expensive stuff and put you a tower up, and you're just a technician, well, first off, you don't got a lot of HF privileges, so that's a waste of time and money anyway. But beyond that, if you're just getting into the hobby, you're going to make mistakes. I wouldn't want to risk putting a brand new operator on a $10,000 radio. Let's just be real. Even if it is their money and not my money, that's a great, crazy idea to do that. What I recommend to a new operator, buy used and buy cheap. That way, if you make a mistake, you're not broke. You know what I'm saying? Also, you need to, it's just, again, it's gatekeeping. There's no sense in it. You don't need to go buy a Flex if you're brand new into the hobby. And second off, do you think that you need to invest that kind of money into something you might not actually not like? There's some people out there that get their ham radio license and they turn out they don't like it. So, and the argument can be made that you can sell your equipment down the road. I don't know. That's not me, but some people are like that, and that's fine. So people also assume that they need to wait until they can afford it. And that's not true. Well, that is true to an extent, but that's not true at the same time. You need to buy the equipment that you can afford. Don't go into debt for equipment. Don't do anything stupid like that. Be smart about it. It's a hobby, folks. A lot of people will sit there and scream, income, 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 income. That's fine. You can be all about income. I have no issues with income whatsoever. But it is a service of this hobby. It's not necessarily the whole hobby. And again, this is where we lose these new operators. Not because ham radio is too expensive, but because we've made it look that way. We should be showing them what's actually possible. A used HF rig, a dipole, maybe a vertical in the backyard. Simple, effective, and proven. That's how this hobby was built. Not on flexing gear, but on making contacts, on experimenting. That's what this hobby is all about in the eyes of the FCC. It's an experimentation license. It's also about figuring things out with what you have. And honestly, that's where the real fun is. Some of the best moments I've ever had in ham radio we're not sitting in a fancy shack. They may have been out portable, out in the woods, maybe doing a POTA activation, throwing a wire into a tree, not knowing what was going to happen. And then suddenly you're making contacts, hundreds of contacts. And these contacts they may be thousands of miles away. That's the magic. That's what hooks people, not a price tag. And I think we've lost sight of that just a little bit. We've turned shack tours into highlight reels. We've turned setups into status symbols. We've turned gear into identity. And for someone on the outside looking in, that's intimidating. It says, you're not there yet. When what we should be saying is, grab what you've got and get on the air. Now, let me hit you with something practical real quick. You don't need a massive desk setup to have a clean, functional station either. And I'm one to talk about a clean, functional station because I've got a mess. Keep in mind, folks, if you're new to this channel, I literally just moved. Again, this is why this is the new HamShackTV studios. But on my desk right now, 1 and 2. These are my two primary radios. This is the ICOM 7300 Mark II. And then up here, we have the ICOM ID 5100. This is HF and 6 meters. This is VHF, UHF, and D-Star. Up there, I have my Kenwood D75. That's it. I also have a Motorola rig that's used for 7800, that kind of thing. But that's not necessarily applicable. And then I've got a little Meshtastic devices here and there. But you don't need a gigantic setup with, stacks of radios. That's not necessary. Even something as simple as how to mount your radio in a vehicle, though, or in your shack, that can make the difference. Honestly, that a clean setup is what impresses hams. Not necessarily what kind of gear you got, but a clean setup. I know for me personally, cable management, which I'm bad at, that always impresses me. But when we're talking about a clean setup, I'll tell you one thing. I've been using Lido radio mounts. They are solid and they are practical, and they just plain work, specifically specializing in a mobile setup. If you want a clean setup without spending a fortune trying to reinvent the wheel, that's the move to make. I've got a link down in the description for Lido radio mounts. If you use that link, you will automatically get 10% off. No fluff, just good gear that does what it's supposed to. Now back to this, because here's the real question we need to ask ourselves. Are we inspiring people to get on the air, or are we intimidating them out of the hobby? Because right now, I think we're doing a little bit of both. And if we're not careful, the intimidation side will win. We'll keep wondering why younger people aren't getting involved, why clubs are shrinking, why activity sounds quieter on the bands. And the answer will be sitting right in front of us. We made it look harder, more expensive, and more exclusive than it actually is. And that's not on the gear. That's on us as hams. So now I want to hear from now I want to hear from you. How much is your shack actually worth? Seriously, how much is your shack actually worth? If you had to put a net value on your shack, what is it worth? And be honest, do you think the big shack culture helps the hobby, or do you think it hurts it? I want to hear. Get down in the description. I will tell you this. My shack is valued at about, thinking off the top of my head, probably about 3,000 or 4,000. That's about it. Let me know down in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Go visit Lido Radio Mounts 73 AA4WX WSCB 693.